Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Taxes, Finance and Insurance webinar of the Connect Welcome Month series. On behalf of the Hague International Center and today's speakers, we'd like to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Stephanie Kortleven, and I will be your host during this webinar. So I'll get to the introduction of our speakers. First, Ilse Veenstra, lawyer labor law at Trevi Advocaten. Followed by Tosca Voogd, marketeer, and Stan de Wit, tax advisor at the Tax Savers. And last but not least, Deborah Valentine, executive director at Access. So for for this afternoon's program, we will share about the Dutch tax and social security system, your rights as an employee, and how to manage your cost of living. So first, Ilse will walk you through your employment contract and the most important labor law components that new international employees should be aware of. Then Tosca and Stan will explain your payslip, including wage tax, the 30% tax ruling, national insurance contributions, and the employee insurance contribution. And lastly, Deborah will talk about the cost of living in the Netherlands, including utilities and insurance. Now I'd like to hand you over to our first speaker, Ilse. Ilse is one of the founders of Trevi Advocaten. She's been a lawyer for 15 years, specializing in labor law. Her clients describe her as a legal advisor with thorough legal knowledge, combined with a no-nonsense analytical approach to problem solving. So Ilse, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, I'm Ilse Veenstra from Trevi Advocaten. I'm a labor lawyer, so I can tell you everything about labor law. And I like to introduce you in the difficulties in the Dutch labor law, because it is sometimes a little bit confusing. But okay, that's the nicest thing about this labor law in the Netherlands. And I will give you some examples so you can understand what I'm saying. What we are going to do is the three stages: what to do before signing the employment contract, how to behave during the period of the employment contract, and how do we end the contract in the Netherlands. Then we can go to the next slide. And we start at the first thing, what to do before signing the contract. And the first bullet point is read and understand the content of the offered employment contract. That sounds, I think, a little bit normal. Yeah, you will read it. But what I see when the people come here, they read very good what the salary is, and what the duration of the contract is, and what the function is. And now that's then it. The rest they don't read. It's not, it's difficult, it's a lot. But it's important to read it so that you know what the employer can see from you. There are three things that are important. That is the employment contract itself. Besides that, we have the collective labor agreement, the CAO. And the third thing that is very important are the company protocols and regulations. And to give you an example of these such company protocols and regulations that are often not read by my clients. Then we go to the next slide. When we saw this, then we have this is the very fake thing in the Netherlands, how to behave during the period of the employment. Now, what the four bullets you see here, you think, oh well, good that they stand there, but it's not very clear to me how to behave. Reasonable and fairness is important. Now, the employer must behave as a good employer. The employee must behave as a good employee. And when we go to court, all circumstances of the particular case count. Now, then you still don't know how to behave. Important with this point, and especially the last one, all circumstances of the particular case, then you have to remember what I said earlier. Everything counts, and so what's said in the employment contract counts, what's said in the collective labor agreement counts, and what's said in the company protocol and regulations count. Then we can go to the next slide. When there is a conflict, what is important in that case? Well, because when there's no conflict, then it's all good. and there is reasonable and fairness, and you're acting as a good employee. But then, yeah, sometimes there is a conflict, and most of the time the conflicts start when people get ill, get sick, they call in sick, and then the employer says, yeah, well, you're not sick, or I think that with these complaints you can work after 1 week again or something. But yeah, a lot of conflicts start there. Or another thing is that there is an evaluation interview, and during that interview the employer says to the employee, you not work well. I have some complaints about you, this, and then the employee says, yeah, well, I behave very good, and yeah, my performance is very good. So yeah, what do you complain about? There are two important things that when a conflict starts. And what is then important? When it is about your performance, then it's not enough that the employer only says for one time, you do not perform very well. It's not you in the Netherlands. You need a period that the employee knows that he's not performing very well. The employer has to say it and has to solve the problem, try to solve the problem. So send him to school to learn something, to perform better, or yeah, give him the help he needs to perform better, and give him a period to perform better. And what is that period? Yeah, then we go back to all circumstances of the case. When you work very short, when you have a period of 1 year or something, and after a couple of months your performance is bad, yeah, then a couple of weeks you have to give to perform better. But when you work for 30 years or something, and then you perform yeah, a little bit less than before, yeah, then sometimes you need half a year or something to perform better, and that the employer have to give you some tools to perform better. So it depends on all circumstances of the case, but know that just one time saying to you that you don't perform very well is not enough to fire you. And all the documentation it's the best that it is in writing and not oral. And then you have the other thing, the disturbed working relationship. When there is a disturbed working relationship, when one of the parties thinks there's a disturbed working relationship, most of the time it is the employee who says, yeah, well, I don't like my colleague anymore, or I don't like my boss anymore. And when that's the case, then it is to the employer to solve the problem, to try to solve the problem. And it is trying, because most of the time it's not working. And mediation is one of the things that the judge wants to see. When there is a disturbed working relationship and you didn't try the mediation and you go to court, then 90% of the cases your question to end the contract will be rejected by the judge. So most of the time you need mediation. And what's happening a lot of most of the time, when there is a discussion about the performance, or there is a disturbed working relationship, then the employee calls in sick in a situation. Is that smart? Not often it is smart. Sometimes it is, because sometimes you get a burnout because of the things that happen in work, but it's not always smart to call in sick. And again, when it's smart and when it's not, depends on all circumstances of the case. Again, but you have to behave as a good employee. So when there's a disturbed working relationship, you cannot say just say, I don't want to work with that colleague anymore because it's outside, it's gray or something. You have to try to to make that relationship better. You have to go to the mediation. You have to help to solve the situation. And it's the same case with the discussion about your performance. You have to listen to reasonable arguments from the employer, and the employer has to say if you perform good or not. So it's the employer who give you some tools, and you can not only say, I think my performance is very good, and it's not true what you are saying, and that is that you can't do, and then call in sick. That's too short. You have to act as a reasonable employee. That is very important. But the most important thing from this point you have to learn is that this is not America or something. So it's not that when you come to your work and then your boss don't like you anymore, can send you away. That's not the case. You are very well protected in the Netherlands, and you have a lot of rights and time to make the situation better. And then we go to the next slide, because then we come to the end of the employment contract. We have, in the Netherlands, we have 3 dismissal routes. The first route is the court, and you go to court if there is something wrong, to say in short, with the employee as a person. So if you think as an employer, you don't think that the performance is very well, you go to court. If you think there's a disturbed working relationship, you go to the court. And the other thing is the culpable conduct of employee. That's not very often. The first 2 I just said are the 2 most important reasons to go to court when you want to end the contract as an employer. Then you have the route via the UWV. You go there when there are business conditions. For example, a poor financial position of the time is up. 1 minute. Poor financial position of the company, or when you are 2 years ill and there's no chance to come back to work, and you can terminate the employment contract by mutual consent. Important by this is the transition pay. It is always when you end the contract, the employer has to pay the transition pay, even when the fixed term contract is ended, because of the period that you work there has ended. So always you have the right on the transition pay, unless you are fired immediate. That was it. Last slide, Q&A.
Yes, Ilse, thank you. Thank you for that. Any questions for Ilse? You can use the Q&A function in your Zoom control bar. I see here from Victoria. What is the transition pay?
Transition pay is it is meant to solve the fact that you are going away. Originally, it was to keep you go to school, to keep you on the right level to go to transition to another job. But now it is just some extra pay. It is 1/3 of a month salary per year that you work there. And if you work for 6 months, then it is 1/6, and so it's per day.
Calculated like that. Okay, thank you. When a fixed term contract naturally comes to its agreed end date, you still have to pay a transition payment?
Yeah, in the case that the employer offered you another period, always. Yeah, always. When it ends, it's
Okay.
Sorry.
In the case. Let's see.
Also with uitzending, when you work with when you with Randstad or something. Also, when you work 2 days, you have to write for the transition pay.
Okay, and transition pay can be asked even though it's not written in the contract?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we're moving on to our next speakers. Thank you, Ilse. I'd like to introduce the following speakers to you, Tosca and Stan from the Tax Savers. The Tax Savers is specialized in helping internationals get familiar with the Dutch tax system, and I find it important that you understand your tax return, especially in the more complex situations. So Tosca and followed by Stan. So over to you.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, Ilse, for your presentation. So today, Stan and I will explain your payslip or the taxes on your payslip. So if we go to the next slide, the topics we will discuss today is the wage tax, the payroll tax credit, the 30% ruling, the national insurance contributions, and the employee insurance contributions. And on the next slide, yes, the wage tax. The wage tax is an advanced levy of income tax, and your employer withholds taxes every month. And because your employer withholds these taxes, you don't have to pay income tax, or you have to pay less income tax. And in the Netherlands, we have a progressive tax system. That means that the higher your income, the higher the tax tariff. And the Dutch tax system has two tax brackets. Tax bracket 1 is for an income until 68,508 euros. And this is taxed at a tariff of 37.1%. And in bracket 2, your income from 68,508 euros is taxed at a tariff of 49.5%. And good to know is that it's not your whole income that's above. If you, for example, have an income of 70,000 euros, it's not 70,000 euros that is taxed against 49.5%, but only the amount that arises to 68,508 euros. And if you just move to the Netherlands, you have to file an M form. And most likely this M form will result in a tax refund. And this is because your employer withholds the taxes as if you have lived and worked in the Netherlands for the whole year. But if you move, for example, in August to the Netherlands, you pay too much taxes and you get a tax refund. So we can go to the next slide. The payroll tax credits. The payroll tax credits are tax rebates. And in the tax rates shown in the previous slide, these tax rebates are not included. This means that you have to pay less tax than as if you calculate this according to the table. And if you work as an employee, you get the general tax credit and the labor tax credit. And we call these tax credits the payroll tax credits. And as a result, you have to pay less payroll tax and there's more salary that you get paid. So how does this payroll tax credit work? If you are an employee, you are entitled to a discount on your tax. And you have to request this discount together with your employer or your agency. And you request this on a form that your employer gives to you, usually before you work there or on the day you start working for the company. And this is a form from the Belastingdienst. And what happens if you have more than one employer? Then you have to apply for the payroll tax credit from only one employer. Because if you don't do this, you probably will pay too less tax because you get tax credit from both of your employers. And then you have to pay that back afterwards. And do you work for several employers in a succession in 1 year, then you can request a payroll tax credit from any employer. And on the graph in the appendix on the slide that you can see, you will see that the more money you will earn, the lower the general rebate will be. So if your annual salary is higher than the 68,508 euros, so if it's higher than tax bracket 1, then you won't receive this rebate anymore. And I would like to give the floor to Stan, and he will explain you more about the 30% ruling.
Thank you, Tosca. I am Stan, and I'm a tax advisor at the Tax Savers. I'm going to tell you something about the 30% ruling, national insurance contribution, and employee insurance contributions. In this slide, I'm going to tell you something about the 30% ruling. The 30% ruling is a Dutch tax rule for employees who are recruited abroad and have a specific expertise that is hard to find for employers on the Dutch labor market. Employees with the 30% ruling can receive a tax-free allowance of 30% of their taxable income, so quite a lot. To apply for this ruling, you must apply for a couple conditions. The first condition that has to be met is that it has to be in the Netherlands-based employer. Next to that is the distance requirement. Incoming employees who have lived for more than 8 months in the past 2 years within 150 kilometers from the Dutch border prior to their first working day in the Netherlands are not eligible for the 30% ruling. This means that people from Belgium and most people from Germany are excluded to apply. The minimum taxable salary of the 30% ruling is 38,961. And if you're younger than 30 and you have a master degree, the minimum taxable salary is 29,616 euros. The maximum period you can receive the 30% ruling is for 5 years. If you're not sure if you apply or not, please contact us in the chat or on our website, taxsavers.nl. In the overview you see on the slide, we made a comparison between your salary as if you had the 30% ruling or not, with a monthly. So let's say you receive a monthly payment of 10,000 euros a month. I know it's a lot. If you don't have the 30% ruling, you can see on the slide, eventually your net payment will be 5,700 euros. If you do have this 30% ruling, you receive a net payment of 7,200 euros. So that's quite a big difference for a net payment. I have to say, this scheme is very simplified. In reality, there are always a lot more indicators that will determine your net payment. In the next slide, I'm going to tell you something about the national insurance contribution. Earlier in this presentation, my colleague Tosca already explained the different tax brackets we have in the Netherlands, the 37% and 49%. In the first tax bracket of 37%, part of it includes the national insurance contribution. The national insurance contributions are social provisions for everyone in the Netherlands. The national insurance contribution has 3 different components in 2021. The first one is the General Old Age Pension Act, AOW in the Netherlands, AOW. The second one is General Surviving Relatives Act, ANW, ANW. And the third one is Long-Term Care Act, WLZ, WLZ. The maximum amount you have to pay for the social insurance premiums is 9,730 annually. And like I said again, this is included in the tax rate that Tosca explained earlier. If you work temporarily in the Netherlands, you might be able to get a A1 and A1 certificate, which will give you an exemption to pay these national insurance premiums in the Netherlands. On the next slide, I'm going to tell you something about employee insurance contributions. Your employer, the employee insurance contributions are for employees who become ill or become unemployed, for example. The employee contributions consist of the following insurances: Unemployment Insurance Act, WWW, Disability Insurance Act, WAO, and Work and Income According Capacity Working Act, WIA, Income Provision for a Fully Disabled Person, IVA, Resumption of Work, Partially Disabled, WGA, WGA, Sickness Benefit Act, ZCZW, ZW. All these insurance are paid for by your employer and are usually not visible on your payslip. On the next slide, we have a Q&A. So if you have any questions about taxes or anything, feel free to ask them in the chat.
Oh, yes, there you are. Okay, thank you both for that information. I see that Tosca already has her eye on a question from Devendra.
Yeah, I think I did that by accident. I was scrolling
Oh.
through the questions and then I pressed, but yeah, I can answer that one. Yeah,
Can you then
some
read
of those-
the question as well? If you just read the question and then the answer, that'd be great.
Oh yeah. So the tax bracket is on basis of the gross income or the net income, but it's based on the gross income.
Okay, so it's fairly fast. Tax brackets based on the gross income. Let's see. The 30% tax ruling applies to a highly skilled migrant. If I change my status from zoekjaar, so the search-year visa, to a highly skilled migrant, I'm assuming would that person then have would that person be eligible for a 30% tax ruling? So if you go from search-year, from a zoekjaar residence permit to a highly skilled residence permit, does that make sense?
Zoekjaar, I'm not sure what that is.
So the residence permit after graduating, that allows you to look for a job in the Netherlands. So you would be looking for a job here. It's not like you're recruited to come and work here. So you either studied here or you studied abroad. Then you apply for that visa and you go look for a position in the Netherlands during a year. Yeah,
so if you're studying, that's also an exception for the 30% ruling. So while doing your master, you can also apply for the 30% ruling.
Okay. Let's see. How do we apply for the 30% tax ruling? Is that something our Dutch employers would do?
Yeah. So usually your employer, it's also a way how employers will get people from abroad to the Netherlands. So they will, in most cases, say it up front. And your employer will give you a form that he or she will probably fill in for most of the part, and then you have to sign it. But if you think you apply, it happens also sometimes that your employer doesn't give you this option, and if you think you apply, you can also go to your employer yourself if you think, and ask them if you apply, or you can come to us, of course, and we can help you with that as well.
Okay. Let's see. If you've been brought to the Netherlands under the 30% ruling and it has expired, if you are hired later on by another Dutch company bringing you from abroad again, can you apply for the 30% ruling again?
No.
Then it's done. Over.
Yeah, then it's done.
Okay.
Only if it's expired by time, actually, not if it's expired because you move away from the Netherlands.
Okay. I see there's a question here about the national pension plan. Is that something that either you, Stan or Tosca?
Yeah, maybe pensions can become a bit complicated sometimes, but maybe I can answer it.
Okay, so if we pay into the national pension plan while we live here, are we eligible to claim this when we retire? And do we have to still be in the Netherlands? Do we still have to be Dutch residents to make use of this pension?
If it's about the AOW, so the National Security Contribution, let's say if you work here for 3 years and you pay those contributions, then eventually when you you reach your pension age, the AOW is probably gone. But if you're on a pension plan that your employer gives to you, then you keep the money. You can take it to your pension fund abroad as well in some cases, or you can keep it in your Dutch pension fund, and and then you will get it at your pension age.
Okay. Another one on the zoekjaar, the orientation year permit from Victoria. What are the requirements for applying for the 30% ruling under zoekjaar, so the search your residence permit. I have a work permit and can start working immediately, but zoekjaar is only valid for 1 year. After 1 year, I need to apply for a highly skilled migrant. When can I apply for 30%? Sorry, I don't know how that fits in what you were saying before, Stan. Is there anything you can say about that?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what she means by zoekjaar, but you can apply for the 30% ruling from the moment you
study
start
one.
your job.
Yeah, okay. That study residence permit, or after you're done studying and then start looking for a job. That's what that permit is for.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So the application is at the moment of you can apply when you start your job. So from your first working day, you can apply.
Okay. How can your AOW contributions go away? Should they not be respected until your retirement age?
Yeah, but maybe that's another question if it should be like that. But if you start working abroad, you lose, I believe, around 2% a year of your AOW. Don't know the exact percentage, but something like that. So eventually, if you're long enough away, then there's nothing left.
There is another question. I'm just trying to see how to, if I understand it correctly, someone who signed a contract for one job, but then now he or she is sent to another company because there's less work, I'm assuming with the initial employer. Would there be any problems tax-wise? Anything that this person should be thinking of?
Both employers are in the Netherlands, I think. So
assuming, there's not that much information. So based on what we see here, and
I can't think of any tax complication for the 30% ruling. Maybe you have to apply again if it's a different company, or you do have to apply again if it's another company. But I can't think of any other tax complication.
Okay. And if perhaps this person would like to be more sure of that, then they can always email you, I'm guessing, with more information, right? Let's keep about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Any more questions? These are all done. Standard Tosca. To see the final one about the AOW. That's something.
For living abroad, so I'm not sure what leaving the Netherlands and living abroad. So living abroad and you still stay registered in the Netherlands, maybe. Is what the anonymous attendee means. Yeah.
Maybe also, for more info, it's okay, if you prefer for them to contact you directly after.
But I think if you leave the Netherlands for a certain amount of period, so after a couple of months, you have to deregister as well in the Netherlands. So
true, yeah. Or 8 months out of 12 months.
Yeah.
What are the tax implications for owning a Dutch property and renting when we leave the Netherlands?
For owning a Dutch property, you can your house, and when you live there, it's going to be taxed in box 1. If you don't live there, it's taxed in box 3, so you have to pay capital tax over it. And renting it out also automatically means it goes to box 3, so it's and you have to pay tax over it. And it also influences if your mortgage deductible, if your mortgage interest is deductible. So if you live in your house, you can deduct the mortgage interest. If you're renting it out, you can't deduct the mortgage interest anymore, and you also have to pay a higher mortgage interest. You have to change your mortgage, actually.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that, Tosca and Stan. We're going to move on. So thank you, everyone else, for your questions. Yes, our last speaker, Deborah, who has spent the first 40 years of her life as a global nomad, having lived in 12 countries throughout her life and speaking 5 languages. The Netherlands has been her home for some time now, but the experience of traveling, settling in and departing countries continues to influence her life and her work. Deborah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, and thanks to my predecessors. As I say, I always learn something new, even though I've been here this long. Yes, so welcome. After all that heavy stuff of taxes and contracts and so on and so forth, I'm going to cover some quick topics. I've been given quite a bit of time. I hope I can get through it. On the next slide, so I'll just tell you a little bit about who we are, who Access is. We're information and guidance organization. We are a nonprofit. It's our 35th anniversary this year. We are run by volunteers. Our volunteers are predominantly the partners and spouses of people who have come here to work. And we're here to answer questions. We don't ask you any questions, but you send us your questions and we will find the answers or the referrals that you need. You can find about 300 questions on our website. And if your specific situation isn't there, then certainly send us an email and we'd be happy to respond to that. Our teams work Monday through Friday, 10 to 4. We have monthly information sessions for anybody who wants to volunteer. And the work that we do is supported by our magazine, by our counseling network, and by a network of trainers who offer a variety of skills to help you in the process of relocation. So today, on the next slide, you'll see I'm going to cover a few topics. There are many, of course, there's thousands, but these are the ones that we get lots of questions on. Transport, insurances, not health insurance to be specific, a little bit about groceries, utilities, and a few things to keep in mind. On the next slide, you'll see public transport. Works very well in this country. The trains have some problems sometimes, but they usually correct them quite quickly. Years ago, we used to have different payment systems for trains and for buses, and now we have the OV cards, the openbaar vervoer, public transport, that we can use to get onto trains and buses and trams, and it's all very centralized. You can have an anonymous card, which is the blue card. You can have a personalized one, yellow. Then you have to have an account on the public transport network system. And then it's automatically deducted from your account. You don't have to upload it. The blue card, it's up to you what you put on there and how you use it. Please do keep in mind, if you want to use the blue card on a train, you have to have a minimum of 20 euros on the card to be able to board the train. Excuse me. So, and of course, for visitors, you can buy anonymous cards, or people can buy tickets which have a day validity or a multiple day validity, usually on buses and trams. Keep in mind, recently they have ceased collecting cash, so you can only pay with a debit card if you've got it. We've had stories of people having difficulties paying with credit cards, but I think that's been overcome. But the Dutch debit card is the only form of transport payment that's available on the buses. No cash at all. And as I said, there's a few links I hope that my colleague May is putting up in the chat, which helps you figure out what you can use and how you can plan your trips from point A to point B. Works very well. System's also available in English. So it's certainly catering to the international community that's coming to live here. On the next slide, insurances. There's lots of different insurances that you may opt for. And we highlight just a few of them here. As I said, I'm not talking about health insurance, which has its own rules and regulations and reasons and how it works, which I'm sure was covered in the health seminar. But some of the general insurances to be aware of and that might be relevant to you. I will pronounce them once in Dutch, and maybe if you have questions, you can take it written if you haven't quite figured out all the vowels in the Dutch language. But aansprakelijkheidsverzekering is basically liability third-party insurance, and it covers the damages that you or family members or pets may cause in an accident. Damage to the apartment you are renting, or someone's thrown a ball in the garden, it's went through somebody's window. these sorts of accidents are covered by this. It's not expensive. The coverage area is quite broad. And if you have active young children, might be something to consider for a little while. I know my son threw a ball through several windows several years in a row, and so we used it to solve some of our difficulties. I can't even pronounce this. Rechtsbijstandverzekering, which is legal aid insurance. These are sorts of insurances you always have to take a risk analysis yourself. Do you think you'll need it? Do you want to pay for it? To have it in your back pocket. Some people will say we're all overly insured, but it depends a lot on your lifestyle and what you do and the activities that you are taking part in. So legal aid insurance might help you if you have a dispute with your landlord or with the neighbors or even the municipality. There's also a huurgarantieverzekering, which is a rental guarantee insurance available for tenants. And this is also to cover payments of your rent in case of long-term illness or unemployment or occupational disability. So again, not saying you should take them, but these are considerations when you're looking at your overall budget and your lifestyle to be considered. Property insurance, the inboedelverzekering of your household items is something that certainly homeowners should have for all besides the property itself, the items that you have inside your home. If you are renting a property that is furnished, the property owner should have all of their items insured. But if you are bringing any personal items in, then you would have to have your own inboedelverzekering to cover those items. Questions about insurance can often also be attended to if you speak to someone at your bank or a financial advisor. Groceries, the next slide. One of the huge advantages of the internationalization of the Netherlands, I've been here for 20 plus years. When I first arrived, there were very, very few shops that had things like limes or tapioca powder or other spices. And with more internationals coming, the variety of things that we can buy in the city has grown exponentially. Some of the larger supermarkets have a lot of these items. If you don't find very specific ones, there are many corner stores where you will find where you'll find the products you're looking for, or you may find something from another country which does quite well with the recipes that you have. Many of the stores have, membership discount systems. We in our family have created an extra Gmail account where we sign up for all these things and get all our bids in there. It's a great way of saving money on items that are on promotion, collecting stickers if you've got a student going off to college, so you can get your knives and forks and table settings that they need as they start a new life. It is worth investigating which ones suit your lifestyle, suit your tastes, and offer you the variety that you need. I also hope that there's a link being put up in the chat, because outdoor markets in the city are fabulous. Even when the weather's a little cooler and wetter and grayer, there are many different neighborhoods in the city that have outdoor markets. It's a great way for us to support local farmers and local community efforts that are being done. There's an awful lot of variety in the cheeses and the meats, but also the products that are being made from fresh fruits and vegetables. So we would certainly encourage to find out when the local market is in your area and make use of those. And of course, the Haagse market is one of the largest markets in Europe. I'm not sure if it still is the largest outdoor market, but it was for the longest time. We've been told that at the end of the day, if you are budgeting, at the end of the day, quite often products will be sold at a slightly lower price because they want to close up and go home. So it's definitely a market that comes in well recommended to the international community. And utilities, yes. So there's 100 utilities that we all need. First and foremost, internet, of course. Forget the phone and television and everything else. We want internet. Many cities, many neighborhoods in the city now have glasvezel or fiberglass connections. Do find out if your neighborhood does, and then make sure that you find a provider who also can update your system and ensure that it works on glasvezel. It works very well. There are many, many different competitive varieties of services from gas, electricity, internet, phone, television. Lots of offers will be sent your way once they figured out you're living somewhere. We would say just be aware of some of the fixed costs that aren't always comparable in all the offers. Sometimes they'll give you what their business offer is, but they're forgetting that there's a fixed cost that you'll also have to pay. Electricity, in our case, we work with a company, but there's a fixed cost that everybody has to pay. And quite often that's not promoted or included in the advertising or the promotion of the monthly rates. So it's we do encourage people to read those things carefully. We encourage you also to ask your neighbors, which is another good way to connect with your neighbors and find out a little bit about what's happening in the area, in your neighborhood. You can always change providers, but please be aware of that usually there's a 1 month cancellation term. In some cases, you might only be able to cancel after a year, but you have to give them a notice. And when you sign up for a new one, make sure you've given notice to the old one. Otherwise, you might end up with a month where you're paying both. I've just lost track of where I am. Oh, yes. Kitchens. Excuse me. One thing, kitchens that we want to let people know about, the city of The Hague is planning to move away from gas, I think by the year 2030. So if renovations are planned in a rental space, just keep in mind, that things will be changing in around 2030. And what this means is also, pots and pans. Not all pots and pans can go onto all stoves, as some of us have learned the hard way. So keep your eyes open for that. Yeah, with contracts, the 1 month cancellation fee is important. Apologies for the cat in the background, he's hungry. And one thing we want to make people very, very aware of is scams and fraud. Please, please know, no government agency, no municipality, no company is going to send you a text message with a link to click and make a payment. If you get a message that's from ING or ABN, please don't click on those links. Please phone. If they're not your bank, delete the link. It's nothing to do with you. If they are your bank and you're unsure, please contact the bank. Don't follow the link. Contact them and ask them about it. There is a very strict and cautious network working in the Netherlands with a DigiD, an online service with your link to your BSN number. This is the way that governments are increasingly communicating with the population. Please avoid any links in phones and even in emails. I would have a lot of suspicion. If you're unsure, let that be the guiding force and find their phone number, find the email address and contact them independently to find out if the message that you've gotten is a true one and you should be following it. The recent scam of the last few weeks has been about BSN numbers running out, coming from IND or something. It will not come to you by phone, not at all, ever, period. So please, we're seeing more and more cases arising from this, and we would highly recommend not ever clicking on a link from any government services or any of your private services. With regards to mobile phones, I think most of us have, caught up to how that is. What we do recommend, if you're still with a temporary phone, when you get it, please make sure that you can keep the number when you move to another provider. So you might have a temporary contract for the first month or two because you don't have a bank account, because you don't have an address. All of these things are all linked together. Important is to try and when you get your phone, to link it to make sure the number can be used later. So you're not then changing everything else plus your phone number. And then just a few things to keep in mind on the next slide. Yeah, fines, boetes, as the word is in Dutch, they come for missing payments, they come for speeding, they come for talking on the phone while you're bicycling. Illegal in this country, by the way. Please don't do that. Missed taxes, delayed payments. The general rule is if you have an objection to them, unless the bill says otherwise, you pay first and then object. Every now and then, the bill will say, of course in Dutch, but maybe a neighbor or a colleague can help you, says if you have an objection, there's a deadline to register that objection, and it'll say you don't have to pay until you've heard back from us. Then you're protected, but meet those deadlines. Parking fee permits especially have gone up. They give you a nice deadline to pay, but the jump from the original fine to the first level and then the third level goes up exponentially hard. So don't leave those lying around too long. And if you have an objection, please register it, but just double check whether you need to pay first and then object. And then if you're lucky, you'll get your money back, or what the order of things to do is. I've lost track of time. I meant to put my timer on and I completely forgot. I can certainly answer questions, but if there's many other questions at any time in your relocation process, because as we all know, relocation takes about a year before we're all settled. We like to say that you haven't successfully relocated until you had your second school day, your second work year, your second spring, your second August, until everything is the second time. That first year is your relocation year. So we're there for any questions that people may have in that process.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Let's see, are there any questions for Deborah? If you have any, please use the Q&A function in the Zoom control bar. Okay, we have one. Is there a website that compares service providers? That's question number 1. 2, where can I call or look at when I need professional help, for example,
Sewage or other house issues.
You got it.
Yeah, yes.
I didn't.
Yeah, so one thing we've all learned from COVID is that all the handymen that we all need are all really busy. So it's hard to find those. May has just put in the chat a link where you can compare service providers. And there are others that also exist. I'm not sure if this link that she shared is also in English, but where you can compare different service providers. Yeah, and where can you call for professional help like sewage or water or other house-related issues? So by all means, you can send an email to Access and we'll help you in our database. I also find that sometimes what's effective, if you're on Facebook, of course, is to put it into some of the expat groups, because there are lots of people who have experience with providers and they'll be able to give you a yay or a nay about their experience with that service provider.
That's great. Very good tip.
I had a quick one just for not so much a quick one, just a clarification for Stan about the AOV. So what I understood with the AOV, so your insurance, is if when you're working here, you're paying for it through your tax credits, but you're only eligible for the number of years that you work. So let's say I worked here 10 years and then I leave and I never come back to the Netherlands, but I can still claim those 10 years, but I have to claim it. The government won't come and find me. I have to activate it. And the amount will be nothing, of course, because it's only 10 years. But I understood that that was the process that worked.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I don't know if Stan has anything to add to that.
He looks a little confused, so.
Does he look confused?
Because of the questions for Anonymous earlier, I looked it up, but you actually lose your AOV if you move abroad and are not contributing to the AOW anymore. Yeah, you can actually lose what you
What you can
for.
Oh, okay. So that we didn't know. That's a correction we'll do at our end. And can you claim it if you know you're not coming back?
So before you reach
your retirement,
age.
yeah.
No.
So basically, this is not good news.
No, it's not good news. Yeah, but that's also why it's possible for expats to claim the A1 certificate. So that way they still pay their national insurance contributions in their own country, and they have probably in most countries their own AOW.
AOW, yeah.
So that's for all the expats in over here. Maybe a good thing to check the A1 certificate on the website of the SVB, Social Insurance Bank of the Netherlands.
Thanks.
Clear that up. Yeah, definitely. Deborah, could you provide any links? Well, mention any of the Facebook expat groups that you recommend?
Yeah, the very active one was Expats in The Hague. Sorry, it's supper time.
She is.
Expats in The Hague, and there's a few female. I'll look them up and send them to you so that you can maybe include in the summary that you send. I can't think of them all right now, but Expats in The Hague is a very active and fairly well moderated group.
Perfect. Stan and Tosca. Core KR, taxation for small enterprises. Does that, can you say something about that? What are the benefits of core?
Stan, you're muted.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Tosca. The core is indeed for small enterprises, and yeah, it actually means you don't have to calculate VAT to your clients anymore. But it only applies if your revenue is lower than 20,000 euros a year. And the bad side from it is that you also can't deduct VAT anymore if you apply for the core. So, but it's less administrative work if you apply for the core.
Okay. Is the A1 an exemption for the pension premiums? Can you please clarify?
Yeah. No, yeah, pension premiums for the AOW, yes, but not for pension premiums from your employer for pension funds.
Okay, clear. Any other questions? We still have some time.
I see another question about vehicle tax.
Ah, yeah, go ahead.
How is it calculated? Yeah, so if you lease a car, you pay bijtelling. Not sure what the English word for it is right now, but that's tax over it. It depends on what kind of car, how old the car is, if it's electric or not, how much tax you pay if you're driving private. If you don't drive private, but only for work or your business, you don't have to pay this bijtelling, and you pay road tax as well. And right now it's a general road tax, so about how much, what kind of car you have, how big it is, and how clean it is. But maybe in the near future it will change to how much kilometers you drive.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, the bijtelling, Deborah, how would you try? Would that be vehicle tax? You know?
I think it's vehicle tax, or I mean, it translates as addition, but I haven't quite made the connection of what in the tax terms would be.
Well, that's just for everybody else that we're talking about. We were talking about vehicle tax. So,
yes.
And Stan's explanation.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Join me in thanking Ilse, Tosca, Stan, Deborah for sharing your expertise with us this afternoon. Again, if anything comes up or if anything comes to mind later on, if you do have another question, then you can reach out to the speakers directly, as we've shared their contact details in the chat window. If you would like to stay updated, receive more information, information on events, you can subscribe to our newsletter. You can do that on our website, hageinternationalcenter.nl/newsletter, or you can follow us on social media. We're active on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. If you have any other questions, for example, on immigration or anything else not related necessarily to tax or labor law, you can email us at internationalcenter@denhaag.nl. And that's it for today. Thanks again, and we hope to connect with you at one of our next events.